we'll hear firsthand how News UK has positioned itself to help brands deepen their engagement with their audiences that they're trying to attract through commercial tie-ups. Just quickly, a little bit more background about Tiffanie. She's founder and director of Method, which is News UK's new creative agency. It covers the Times, the Sunday Times and the Sun.
It's been hugely exciting since I started, working so much on digital, doing video, a lot more social as well. And I found that actually that more challenging side of things has been hugely creative and also strategic as well. There are about sort of 20 to 25 of us as core, but it is what people like to call an accordion structure, so we kind of stretch and not depending on with the amount of work that we've got on. But we have some journalists, commissioning editors, we have a creative director, a digital designer and digital developer team, and we bring in expertise that we know and use and have kind of trusted contacts with depending on the campaign. I mean, what we're offering here is basically journalistic oversight together with creative innovation. The hardest thing is trying to streamline the client's message and get it to the audience without it being filtered and kind of distorted as it goes through all the separate agencies. And I think that probably is, you know, us working together to make sure that actually the client gets what they thought of in the beginning.
How do you work out brand fit? What brands are going to work?
Well, that I think is again where you need a little bit of journalistic oversight, and not every brand is going to work in every platform, and media agencies really, it's their job to know who they should be directing their clients towards, but that doesn't always happen. But I think, you know, we're also, as I said, about creative innovation, so if it's not about the money but it is about doing something really interesting and new, then we're totally in the game for that.
On that note, I think you've got some examples.
This was a campaign that we're running at the moment actually with Bicester Village. So they are a discount retail park. They relied on an awful lot on tourism, and particularly Chinese tourists as well. As we know, Chinese tourism is dropping off, so they needed to reconnect with their domestic market. But they didn't really have a fashion voice or really a journalistic voice either. They didn't have a voice in the industry in which they're working, which is fashion. So what we said was, okay, we will give you a fashion voice, we will connect you with key influencers in the fashion world. They will create, through a social media campaign, all sorts of content for you. And then we will activate that content across social media channels and within Style itself. And it's a really nice integrated campaign around a social media competition, around events, going up to Bicester Village, and also showcasing the product that Bicester Village has, because obviously it can't talk about its product because it's all on sale. But if you can get customers who've been to show off what it is that they've bought under a hashtag treat me, hashtag Bicester Village, then everybody will start to understand what there is available there and why they should go and buy all their shoes there.
I mean, how do you strike a balance between paid and earned?
If it's paid for, we take, you know, and it fits our criteria, we'll take it. And I think in many ways, you could say we're in a much more honest position now than we were perhaps 5 years ago, because people are, including on the editorial side, are much more conscious of the difference between earned and paid for. And ultimately, when we're making decisions now on the editorial side about what we can do and what we can't do, we have one question, which is, does the reader know where they are? Do they know that that is paid for commercial space? And I think they very much do.
I would add that a part of the evolution as well has been that the newspapers used to apologise for their commercial content. I mean, they used to think that actually it was inferior content. And really what we're doing now is we're saying just because it's paid for, it doesn't mean to say it be inferior. It should be just as good, if not better.
Yeah.
That's the interesting change at the moment, that the transparency and authenticity of the relationship that journalism and paid for is moving into. The struggle, I think, for PR folk is actually the position media agencies take, because they have a totally different perspective on how that paid for should work, you know, full of brand messages, and they don't. What we know, what publicists know, is a better relationship with newspapers, journalists, where it fits.
And quite often you guys are involved in talking to your brands about the values that they have and constructing creatively for brands a story around a set of values that they have, and you know that has to have integrity in order for it to work, otherwise the readers will notice it straight away.
But Mark, would there ever be an instance where you are recommending to your client to do some paid work?
But I think some of the budgets that people in this room are probably playing with are small. And so therefore you've got to be a lot more inventive, a lot more creative of coming up with something that actually is effective, that generates that sort of amount of conversation around a brand. And I don't mean idea porn. I see too many, too great ideas that actually mean nothing. But when it really works, and there's some fantastic growing examples, I think it's a very exciting time for people being very inventive with small amounts of money, particularly because of digital. But if it's a big brand like Vodafone, you've got a lot of money to spend and find it very uncomfortable to go into that pure journalism space, particularly at time of results and whatever, there are subtle ways you can do it. So I think it's horses for courses, really, and I'd never say no to anything, and how it would fit in. And it's constantly evolving. That's the exciting thing about it. And I think the more leverage on best practice, helps us all to understand more about how to use. So it is a pretty amazing thing to see Tiffanie Darke now working on the dark side. So and that shows just how important it is to this organisation that somebody with those deep relationships are working with it, and someone who has the breadth and experience is only a good thing for people in this room.
I think that there's been a big shift I've noticed in the last 4 or 5 years in the way that PRs have been empowered, and I hope you are empowered more, because you can see the perspective objectively, which many of the other agencies can't, because you see it from the journalistic and side point of view, and you see it from your client's point of view as well. And you've always had to tread that very tricky ground between the two of not burning your journalistic contacts as well as keeping your client happy at the same time, which does actually put you in a unique position to move into this kind of world and to have the kind of best authority in it. And clever clients, I think, will hire PRs that are able to advise them like that, and will listen to them as well.
I totally agree, and that's the exciting moment for it. In a day, one of my pals in advertising called up and said, "Hey Mark, I've got a great PR idea, can I talk you through it?" I said, Jesus, would I call you up and say, "I've got a great outdoor campaign, can you have an idea about it?" So I think that Tim is absolutely right. There's a fantastic opportunity to take control, and therefore we should respect that. We should respect how we leverage the idea and how we actually challenge the client on sort of ideas, because that's quite tough. If you're fighting in a very competitive market and you have to say no to a client, you've got to be pretty damn sure that no is going to be respected. And sometimes, the idea of spending money as driven by perhaps one of the media houses is probably, as in the heart of hearts, something wrong. Are you going to challenge that? Are you going to question that? And I think that can only grow further respect and will ultimately empower a stronger relationship with the client.
The events thing is something that is worth considering, actually, because actually when you can build in a campaign around a set of events, that's very engaging, isn't it? And we're really lucky because we have our Times Plus function here. So we have our members of the Times and the Sunday Times sign up to Times Plus, which is our kind of core, super connected, super engaged audience. And whenever we have events with Times Plus, they are incredibly well attended. And they're a really interesting audience, and actually some of the best campaigns that we can do for people is where we can build in that marketing side and build in that audience as well and give some extra value. So actually the longer the campaign runs, the more you learn about the people that you're talking to, the more valuable that is, and the more valuable your campaign can be going forward for them.
But I think that answers a certain question. I think that great paid for actually comes from a pretty good budget, and I think effectively if you can turn that away from a display space and actually turn it into something that is integrated with a bigger campaign and a bigger idea over 18 months, you are going to have you're going to have greater value and integration with it, and particularly if you can involve yourself with the black book of the newspaper in terms of what they can offer in terms of journalists and actually their own community. So I don't think you can ever achieve, well, you never say never, but I don't think you can achieve much with small budgets in advertorial. But if you can actually get hold of that as appeals away from the media houses and do something a lot more effective with your campaign that you've built, then clearly you're going to have, you're going to keep everybody happy, because you can get that sort of balance between generating sort of stories around it and developing a deeper relationship with the idea. But what is that final idea? Have you created it, or has it come from a marketing or an advertising perspective, which is more difficult when somebody's giving you something to work with, as opposed to you coming up with that holistic idea that carries through right the way through the marketing campaign.
I think you can always mine other budgets though as well. So I mean, a lot of the small budget stuff that we're doing at the moment has actually got a deeper level to it, because we are now developing ourselves as a content agency. This is method. Developing ourselves as a content agency direct for clients. So we're talking to a couple of brands at the moment about creating content for them that they use on their own owned media, or that they distribute in their stores or across their own platforms. And they've only got a small amount of budget actually to activate that in the Times, the Sunday Times and the Sun. But it doesn't matter, because we're doing that bit of work for them where there is that marketing budget to do the extra content. So I think, you know, don't be put off if you've got a small budget, because, you know, there are other imaginative ways of being able to repurpose something in order to have a meaningful campaign.
We've had a few questions in about this. There seems to be a perception out there that the paid-for journalists, the journalists doing the paid-for content, are perhaps not as knowledgeable as others that sort of specialise in their field. And, you know, it's a perception. How would you answer that? What would you say to that?
Well, I categorically deny that one. I mean, I wouldn't...
It's funny, I don't know where... we had it through from quite a few people who have sent in questions.
So we've actually just hired somebody to work on the Vodafone campaign. She is an incredibly respected business journalist. She actually already writes for the Times and the Sunday Times pages as a freelancer. She's edited her own small business magazine. I'm really excited she's coming to join us. That it would be doing everybody a disservice if you didn't have the same journalistic excellence and editorial standards across that. The person who's doing the most harm actually would be the reader. So.
Mark, do you think paid has found its place in PR?
I think always did. I think it's more professionalised now. It's a different relationship, and it can be more effective, as I said, because I think PR has a much bigger voice than it once did, and a lot more respect. You know, there's a lot of good operators out there who actually, you know, make the sector, you know, better than it was. So it's always had its place. I don't think this is anything new. I just think the way we're taking it and the way it's going is pretty exciting for the right brand at the right time, the right campaign with the right budget.
Well, you guys are strategists. You know, you should be hungry to get more of the piece of this pie, and you're in a really good position to advise your clients and to have more of a powerful role in the way they communicate with the media. So you should go for it.
Thanks for coming along today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Very big thank you to Tiffanie, Mark and Emma for joining us today. Thanks so much, guys.